All right, let's do the viewpoint screen. And this is really a surprisingly important screen because we've got our V-speeds on the screen, and V-speeds matter a lot. Let's start by looking at the upper left here, VSO. Now, I'm gonna make this presentation applicable to people that are just getting started in aviation. VSO, that is the stall speed with flaps down. We sometimes call this a stall speed dirty. And a stall speed, as you almost certainly already know, is where you raise the nose to the point, the air separates over the top of the wing, you lose lift, and the airplane stalls. So the dirty stall, flaps down, that's VSO. What speed does that happen at gross weight in 1 G of flight? The next number to look at is VS. This is the stall speed with the flaps up. We call this the clean stall speed. Of course, it happens a little higher speed because we don't have those flaps adding lift for us. Next one is VX. This is the best angle of climb. So if you've got full power, you raise the nose until you get to, in this case, 62 knots, and you're going to get the best angle of climb coming up out of the runway. This is obviously useful if you're taking off in a short runway with trees at either end. You want the best angle of climb to get up over those trees. Below that is VY, best rate of climb. Now this is the one where you're already clear of any trees. You don't need the best angle. Now you just want to get up to your cruise altitude as quick as you possibly can. So you use VY, best rate of climb. It's just how quick can you get up to altitude. After that is VBG. That is velocity best glide. So if the engine quits, you lower the nose just enough to hold that speed, and you're going to get your best glide on down to hopefully safe landing. VFE-M. This is flap extension. VFE stands for flap extension. The flaps can go to their maximum deployment, in this case at, looks like 85 knots. Now, in the Cessna 172, there's a VFE-1. It's a little higher speed for that first notch of flaps, and that's 110 knots. So in the Skyhawk, you can lower that notch, lower those flaps down by 1 notch at 110 knots, let the airplane slow down to 85, and then add the rest. Now, with airliners, they have a different V-speed for every single flap deployment, all like 10 or 12 of them or whatever there are. But we're just going to keep it simple and do our first notch and our full flaps, flap extension speeds here. Now, the next one is super, super critical, and this is VA, or maneuvering speed. Let's go to the whiteboard to talk about that one. All right, here we go, maneuvering speed, and I cannot stress how important this is. So back when I was first getting my pilot's license, I read that the maneuvering speed in the Cessna 152 that I was training in was like 85 knots. And what everybody tells you about maneuvering speed is, above maneuvering speed, you better not deflect the controls the whole way, or if you do, you'll break the airplane. You'll overload it from all the dynamic pressure on the airplane. Right? Think about it. If your plane's going really fast, you move the stick all the way back, it pulls up so much it'll break the airplane. And so maneuvering speed is the speed below which they tell you can deflect the controls all the way, and above which you better not. The thing is, anybody that tells you this is wrong. And I've learned this kind of the hard way, and I almost died from it. So here's what I did. I took a Cessna 152, back when I was first getting started, and I went up to just a little bit below maneuvering speed, and I said, I can deflect the controls all the way now. Let's see what the control authority of this airplane really is. And so I pulled the stick all the way back, just a little bit below maneuvering speed. And sure enough, pulled a little bit of G, but not enough to break the airplane. The stall warning, whee, started to go off, so then I eased off the stick. And that's fine. That was a safe demo. Below maneuvering speed is taking the airplane to the limit, but not going over any limits. And then I said, well, now I'm gonna push the stick all the way forwards. That's a full control deflection, so I pushed the stick all the way forwards. The negative G load was insane. I mean, I came up against my shoulder belt, all the maps, this is back when we had physical paper maps and logbooks lying around the cockpit, they all came up and hit the ceiling. And I don't know how close we were to folding up the wing and the airplane under negative G, but we were not within anything that was safe. And I feel like we may have come close to folding the wing up on the airplane. And I still think to this day what it would have been like for that call to go to my parents, since I was a teenager at the time. So I've never forgotten the real truth of maneuvering speed, which is it only applies to pulling back on the stick and nothing else. So let's take a look at this in more detail. This is the VG diagram. This is G load. okay? And this is velocity. Oh, and I'm gonna put a 0g right here. Whoop. Okay, so there's a 0g at this point. If you have 0 speed, you have 0g load. As the speed builds, the green line is the amount of lift the wing can put out to lift you up, and the red line is the amount of lift the wing can push down. I mean, clearly, the faster you go, the more lift the wing can put out, both positive and negative. And eventually, these lines get big enough that when you get to VA, the maneuvering speed, the G load for a normal category airplane is 3.8 Gs. So what that means is, at the maneuvering speed, I think it's about 110 knots or so for the Skyhawk, it varies with weight, but at the maneuvering speed, a normal category airplane will put out 3.8 Gs. And here's the thing to understand. A normal category airplane wing is only good for 3.8 Gs. Yes, I can see the YouTube comments now. What about the safety factor? What about it varies with weight? Yeah, all that stuff. I don't care about those tiny little details people can argue about. What I care about is the certified normal category limit for an airplane is 3.8 Gs, and anything beyond that, you're into your margin for error, and since no airplane is in perfect condition, you're probably farther into your margin for error than you think. And so at maneuvering speed, 3.8 Gs. So here's what gets interesting. And this is what everybody teaches you. And that's why when I was in that little Cessna that day and I pulled the stick all the way back, I was probably operating right, a little below maneuvering speed, a little below 3.8 Gs. Maybe I pulled 3.4 Gs or something. Okay. But then when I pushed all the way forwards, what do you think the negative G limit was? What was the negative G you think I got? Well, if the wing can push down just as much as it lifts up, then it'll also put out negative 3.8 Gs at the same speed. Now I can hear the YouTube comments again. Wings put out more lift up than they do down. Well, if the airfoil is not symmetrical, that's true. A symmetrical airfoil obviously puts out the same amount of lift up and down. A non-symmetrical airfoil will put out less lift in the downwards direction than it does in the upwards direction. Yeah, that's true. But by how much? Do you know? Of course you don't. It varies with the airfoil. Varies with all kinds of things. And so, while the wing will put out 3.8 Gs positive at maneuvering speed, it will put out something like approximately 3.8 Gs negative, more or less. Maybe not quite as much if it's cambered and it's designed to lift up, not down. Maybe it'll be negative 3.4 Gs or negative 3 Gs, something like that. It might not be exactly as much negative lift as positive lift, but in a symmetrical airfoil, it'll be exactly this. And it won't be too far off. This is a good ballpark for the amount of negative lift you can probably get out of that wing. But here's the thing. The certified negative G load for a normal category airplane is negative 1.52. Think about that for a moment. You are in an airplane where if you pull all the way back on the stick at your maneuvering speed, you will see your maximum limit. Okay, you can fly to limits sometimes, but if you push all the way forward on the stick, I have no reason to believe you will not exceed your structural limit. You push all the way forward, you may get something like approximately negative 3.8 Gs more or less. Your structural limit is negative 1.52. You are asking to fold the wings down if you push that stick all the way forward at maneuvering speed. Nobody ever teaches this, but they should for the reasons I've outlined. All I can say is take this presentation, share it with everyone, and tell everyone. Maneuvering speed only applies to pulling back on the stick. Pushing forward, you might fold the wings right up. There was an Airbus over New York shortly after September 11. He encountered the wake turbulence of another airplane, and the pilot started dancing all on the rudders. Oh, let me try and get out of the wake turbulence with rudders. Ripped the tail right off the plane. The thing spun down, killed everyone. Where was he compared to maneuvering speed? He was doing full-scale rudder. What about ailerons? I don't think of ailerons as being structurally hard on an airplane at all, but do I see, or do you see any aileron limits in this diagram? I don't know what they are. So Maneuvering speed is only designed to pull all the way back on the stick. For anything else, I don't know what the published limits are. I haven't been able to find them. And so we've gotten away with this in aviation for as long as we have because people don't do full-scale control deflections in airplane up at high speed because of common sense. But I want to point out that nobody should consider going all the way forward on the elevator, even if they're a bit below maneuvering speed. As the speed builds up, let those control pressures or control deflections come down. Okay, and we're back from the whiteboard. The next one is VNO, velocity normal operating. And this is the speed that you can go to in bumpy air. Then you've got VNE, velocity never exceed, and you can only go that fast in smooth air. So in other words, in bumpy air, you don't want to exceed VNO, velocity normal operating, and in smooth air, you're limited to VNE, velocity never exceed. But here's the thing. In my life, I have been flying along in air that is completely, totally, absolutely smooth. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, instant, bam, wake turbulence or thermal from maybe a chimney of a factory down below or letting out hot air or something. I don't know. But I've hit sudden thermals and sudden wake turbulence that have been pretty violent, actually. And so anytime somebody says, I know, I'm going to go above VNO, but stay below VNE because I'm in smooth air, I instantly say, hold the phone. You don't know if that air is going to stay smooth. You could enter moving air like that with no warning at all. So I think the whole concept of operating between VNO and VNE in smooth air is quite a bit dangerous. And when I operate an airplane, I will not operate above VNO ever, because I assume that I'm going to hit that sudden vertically moving column of air or wake turbulence from an airliner that passed several minutes before, which has happened to me. And so I stay below VNO all the time, or at VNO all the time. MMO, that's your maximum Mach number. So these maximum limit speeds, VNO and VNE, they're due to aerodynamic loads building up on the airplane. And what's so cool is they're indicated airspeeds, right? So the higher you go, the faster you can go for a given indicated airspeed, because the indicated airspeed is a pressure reading. The indicated airspeed comes from the airspeed indicator, which gets its measurement from a little pitot tube that measures pressure in the air. So these indicated airspeeds are pressure readings on the airplane. They apply no matter what the altitude is. But while these VNO and VNE are clearly designed for maximum pressures that are allowed to act on your airplane in flight, MMO is a little bit different. The Mach number is associated with possible building up of shock waves. And no, shock waves are going to build up at 0.4, but I mean, look, we're in a Cessna 172 for goodness sake. But as shock waves build up as you approach speeds closer to the speed of sound, the dynamics of the airplane can obviously change. So jet airplanes are going to have an MMO as well. Don't go above a certain Mach number. And then you have your positive and negative G limits. And as you can see, these numbers were entered rather approximately in PlaneMaker because as we've just gone over at the whiteboard, the normal category G loads are a little bit different than this. So, and as you see, the negative G limit is lower than the positive G limit, which is why it is possible to break the airplane. So even if you're below maneuvering speed. So the 2 points I really want to make on maneuvering speed for safety here, and these are both kind of myths of aviation. One myth of aviation is that it's safe to exceed VNO in smooth air. I say it's not. You can enter turbulence at any moment. The other myth is to say you can fully deflect the controls below VA. I say you can't, because a full forward stick deflection is going to be much more dangerous than a full up stick deflection because the wings are not designed to withstand negative G. All right, those are the V speeds, and just so I can complete this whole window to say I've done this video properly, why don't we take a look at the pilot's eye viewpoint. Just take the space right between the pilot's eyes, boom, that's the viewpoint location in the cockpit, so you can set up the orientation of the runway lines and all that properly, and everything looks like it's being rendered from the right viewpoint in the simulator. You have the longitudinal arm, which is how far back the thing is, the lateral arm, which is how far to the side it is, and the vertical arm, which is how far up it is. So that's just where, boop, right at the top of my nose is in the cockpit. Then you do the same thing for the camera, complete with camera offsets and field of view as well. If you have the camera instrument, which you can enter in the instrument panel editor, this is the location where that camera goes. And then finally, some fidgety little stuff about the map that's like hardly matters, but what runways and airports and runway links do you show on your moving map? Okay, whatever. The important stuff to cover here is the pilot's eye be in the right location for the right viewpoint from the cockpit, and you understand these V speeds, especially the fact that the VNO, you can operate above VNO safely is a myth, and that you can fully deflect your controls below VA is a myth. Understand that both of those are myths that can break the airplane in flight if you believe them.